Good evening. Happy Sunday. Happy New Year's to everyone. This is Jason. I'm KC5HWB, and this is Ham Radio 2.0. Everybody else here is 1.0. Y'all are way back and behind the times. But this is the next episode of what was, I don't even remember who came up with the name YouTubers Bunch, but I didn't come up with it, but I thought it was good, and I really like the thumbnails we've done for it. So we're going to welcome some new people tonight, and we're going to talk about how everyone got started in amateur radio and what we've learned along the way. So stick around.
Shut up and sit down.
Before we get started here, I would like to, let me close that. I would like to mention, and I'll put this link in the YouTube description below, but those of you who might remember Cale Nelson, who ran for a couple of years, he ran a podcast, an audio-only podcast called Ham Radio 360. He was featured quite a bit in the main trading company emails that Richard Lenore sends out. His wife was diagnosed with cancer in April of 2019, and they started this GoFundMe page to help raise money for medical expenses and family care and etc. You can read about it right here on this link that I'll share. But if you feel so inclined, if you're able to help, it'd be really cool to show support for Cale and his family during a time when hopefully very few of us have to go through. It's not a very good, I can't imagine what it would be for my wife to go through that. It'd be just as hard on me as it would her. Probably not, but almost. So, and they have kids together. They have, looks like 5 kids together. So it's, I hear she's doing well. I haven't talked to him in a couple of months. I did trade emails with him a while back, and Cale's a really, really down to earth dude. Talk to you all day long. Really likes ham radio. If you're able to click on the link below, the GoFundMe link that'll be in the YouTube description, and see what you can do for that. Every little bit helps. All right, let me switch my view here. There we go. All right, so tonight, and Bob K6UDA is running late, so he might join us later. But I'd like to say welcome to Rob N1NUG, and Mike K6MRD, Kyle AA0Z, and the Smoking Ape. Dude, I don't know your call sign, and you don't have to tell us if you don't want to, and that's cool. But feel free to come up with that later on if you want to. We got Calum here from DX Commander, Sterling, Josh, and Kevin, W6RIP. So I think I know it's the first time that TheSmokinApe, Calum, and Kevin have joined us. So we're happy that the group is growing and expanding. So I'm going to let who wants to go first between you 3 new guys?
Is my audio working?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it sound like?
No, it sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. No language though, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's just the mic that's on this little camera. I'll get my stuff sorted out better for next time.
That's cool. No problem. Okay. Let's go. Why don't you go first, Kevin? Tell us a little bit about your channel, what you do. I know what you focus on, but some of the people may not, and how you got started in ham radio.
All right. So W6RIP Radio Adventures is my channel, and got started on it. Actually did some random shooting videos a few years ago, and then just got into ham radio 3 years ago. Immediately wanted to go portable. So field day, I spent my first field day building an antenna on field day, and I was able to take it out and use it, and like to go camping, take that little thing out. But eventually over time, just talking on repeaters, doing a little bit of HF from the house, one of my local repeaters, they started talking about a guy on a mountaintop. I was like, it just caught my interest, and I love being outdoors. So I was like, then I hear about Jerry and KG6HQD, and he's up there, and then I hear he has a YouTube channel, and I watch YouTube videos, and next thing you know, I'm like, that's it. I just clicked. Everything clicked, and had a lot of fun with that. So I put together a little portable unit. I got an 891. It's a little too heavy at first, but just had fun going portable. I eventually graduated. They did one activation with an 891, and the next week I bought a KX2. So,
that is a move in the right direction.
Yeah, it worked out really well. Then I started building my own antenna, and I've had fun ever since. But then I really liked how Jerry was out there, sharing how to do it, and sharing the trailheads, and sharing the hiking. And I was always into hunting and hiking and outdoors and camping, and so everything kind of clicked. There's a bunch of hobbies all rolled into one. So then I wanted to also just add to contribute and make some videos and show how cool and fun it is. And here we are a couple years later, and I'm enjoying it.
Cool. So your channel's been around for like 2 years, or how long?
About 2 years. The channel's been around for a while, but as I started doing soda videos last January. Well, 2 Januaries ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Cool, man. Well, thanks for joining us. We're really happy to have you. And you were on the Mount Pacifico soda expedition with Josh and them. That's how you and I met the first time. So
correct.
It was great.
That was a blast. I really I had to make a point to get up there. So when I got out of work, I shot over there to the mountain, and then I got up there late. But I wanted to really meet all you guys and offer any tips or tricks or anything like that, and just kind of show what soda is and how easy it can be.
Well, we were glad to have a search and rescue professional.
That's us. Right.
We appreciate it, just to bail us out if we got in trouble.
You guys are all good.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. Thanks for joining us, man. I really appreciate it, Kevin. Calum, thanks for the DX, man. Appreciate you joining us tonight. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your channel, what you focus on, and how you got started in ham radio and on YouTube as well.
Yeah. Well, the YouTube thing, it's a kind of a 3-stage career. So the first few videos, maybe 10 years ago, was just for like club members. I didn't even have a camera then. I used to do screen grabs of software, and particularly a couple of weeks before field day, just to show them how the logging works. And those crappy videos are still up there. But then I started making this antenna. And I thought the easiest way out the problem, other than a sort of a 15-page user guide, is to make a couple of videos just to show people how the thing worked. And of course, once you start making relatively reasonably thought out videos, you start getting comments. And then I realized that actually it was the viewer interaction that was very cathartic for me. And then I realized I actually had a community slightly bigger than my club. Then I had a community bigger than my village. And then my community was bigger than my town. And then it just snowballed like that. And so I categorize it almost into 3 phases. Now I'm, I have ambitions for YouTube. It's very... they're like my friends, these subscribers, and they're regular commenters, and you get to know the names, don't you? The guys who always comment, and they know the in-jokes from a few videos ago, and that's really nice. It's better than the local club in that regard.
Yeah.
How I got into radio was, as a very young man at school, we had it was called the Combined Cadet Force. So in the US, some sort of military. When you're 14, you put a uniform on a Wednesday afternoon or Friday afternoon. It was a boarding school, very British and horrible. And but the older boys had this kind of little rough room with this lot of green radios in it, and this wire, the sacred wire that went over the toilet block. But because I had a bit of a reputation at the school, nobody wanted me anywhere near these radios. But it always lit I always thought, gosh, who they talking to and that sort of thing. And some of you might know, when I was a very young boy, 18, I actually got a job on a millionaire's private yacht. And on that yacht, they had this HF set. And I had absolutely no blooming idea how it worked. But occasionally I was on bridge watch. When we're docked, they wouldn't let me play with all the buttons when we're actually out sailing. But they might all be out at the bar or whatever else, and no one's on the boat apart from me, and I would twiddle with the knobs on the HF set. And sometimes I would get somebody. I wouldn't talk back to them, but I would get a station. And other times it was totally silent. I'd probably hit the mute button or something. But then listening to the captain actually calling probably looking back on about 8 to 8.5 megahertz on voice, using SSB, calling CQ. No, he didn't use CQ. He said Portishead Radio. This is Golf Victor India Delta, and he would make a telephone call and give the number, and a man would make a phone number. So that radio thing was just amazing. And then I was in a car with a really sexy girl when the CB craze was out, and she had this CB set. Oh, I thought, wow. So finally, kind of it all clicked together. And I sometimes wonder now, because we don't, they just have Zello and WhatsApp. There's no magic of radio anymore. Or is there? I don't know. Because must have been 1,000 kids over the years through this Jamboree on the air and all that baloney. And only one kid out of thousands of children ever got a license. But maybe it's one of those things that when they're 45 and they've had their children and everything, they might come back into the hobby. Oh, what was that thing that Callum used to do? That was cool. Maybe they'll come back then. I don't know. But that's kind of my journey so far. I'll run you past later what I want out of this year, but that's how we got into it.
Cool. Hey, man. I was corrected by someone who's on the stream that your name is Callum, not Calum. So I'm sorry about that.
Big Cal.
And I said, hey, I'm from Texas. We don't pronounce anything right here anyway. So
I've noticed.
No, good, man. Hey, CB is how I got into it too. So I always liked the idea of being able to communicate over long distances without a landline. With basically
it's just cool. And I
through
think
the air. Yeah.
Sometimes 2 meters is like that still. You get that 20-mile bump,
Oh, yeah.
You hit the guy on the other side of town. It's just,
good.
To me, it's still cool, but,
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for being on the show. It's good to have you here. So we're going to go over here to TheSmokinApe. And that's really the only name I know you by. So tell us whatever you want to. You don't have to tell us, your name or your call sign or anything like that. And your camera's even a little bit got dark on your face there. So you don't have a light. So welcome to the group, man. Glad you're here. So floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. My channel's not so much a ham channel the way your guys' channels are. So I do appreciate the invite and being included. My story is probably not going to sound as good from an audio standpoint or be as exciting as Callum's, but we'll go ahead and give it a try. I really got into radio at a pretty young age. When I was in high school, all my buddies and I, this is in the 80s, we all ran out and bought CBs and put them in our cars. There was no pagers, cell phones, or anything like that. So when we would go out on the weekends or after school or something, we get on a CB and then throw your handle out there, and everybody say, "Oh, we're over at the park," or "We're heading to the mall, going to go ride skateboards," or something like that. And it was pretty cool. I knew a couple guys back then that were in the ham, but this is what I always tell people. I'm like, the guys that had CBs had hotter chicks than the dudes who had the ham radios in their cars. So it was really an easy choice for me to make at the time. And so that's what I did. And I got into, and I was into that for a while. And then about 10 years ago, I've always been into like hiking and camping and stuff like that. And I was watching YouTube videos about, pocket knives, camp knives, backpacks, flashlights, just gear like that. And, I was like, I could do that. And I started making some videos of the gear my buddies and I were buying, because, we're all a little bit older, secure in our jobs and stuff. And we were like, hey, let's, go hike this trail, or let's go do this. And so we just started buying gear, and as I was buying it, I'd say, hey, this is what I bought, and this is what I bought it. And part of that was FRS radios and stuff like that. And my one buddy's like, dude, we should get these Balfang radios, man. We could talk to each other. And so we did. We went out and got licensed, and that was that. It was about 5 years ago. And then just a few weeks ago, I actually went and I took the general test. I didn't really have an interest in it, because I'd always just done UHF and VHF and local repeaters and scanning and SDR, and that was always enough to keep me busy from a hobby standpoint. And anybody I talked to was really just locally. But I guess it was about a year ago, I found, maybe a little bit longer than that, I found Josh's channel. I started watching it and joined the Discord, and a couple of folks were telling me a little bit about HF, and somebody says, by the way, I'm using mute on my mixer, not Zoom. So anyhow, I watched that, and I just started learning more and more about HF. I was always nervous about what kind of antenna I could put up at my house, because I have a brutal HOA. And so I figured it out, and then I went and took the test, and that's that.
Cool. Hey, well, I'm glad to have you here, man. I know that
Thanks.
I've been talking on Josh's Discord for some months now. So you seem to have a pretty good perspective on DMR stuff that, I'll say something, you'll come along and you're like, oh yeah, this and this and this. And most of it, I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point there. So yeah, I appreciate you joining us here.
Add something real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, so I didn't have a chance to really think about it, and as those guys were talking, kind of brought up some old memories. And actually, I talked about how I started in soda, but not how I started ham radio. So just to be quick, back in 7th grade, I was into CB. I put a nice big antenna up in the middle of a tree, had an amp, did the whole yakety yak on there, had fun with that. And then when I got into high school, started playing football and whatnot. But here it goes, almost 20 years later, my buddy shows up. We go out on Jeeping trips, and he shows up and he gets his shows me his ham radio in his Jeep, and gets on the wind system and does the whole, talk around, the what do they call it? You do the wind system something or other. But everybody chimes in and says something. And it's like, wow, it's pretty amazing. So went out and got my technician license, and then 1 month later got my general. So that's kind of how that all came about. So I'll throw that out there real quick.
Yeah, the wind system demonstration.
Yes,
they all come
that's
back
it.
from all over the world now. Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool. Yeah, that's, Josh texted me earlier today and said that there's one of those repeaters in Galveston.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to check that out when I'm back down there in March. Good deal. All right, let me go back to the gallery view here. And we have been graced with the presence of Mr. K6UDA. Oh my gosh.
Hey.
We're complete now, guys, right?
Fashionably late.
That's all right. That's all right. No problem. So I think this is the most people we've ever had on. This is 10 people. So this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool.
You're
like
beyond the Brady Bunch intro now.
I know. I got to have to. And in fact, all you new guys need to send me a headshot of yourselves, preferably not vertically, but horizontally.
Straight cap Cal.
Yeah. There you go.
In clothing.
Add you to the in clothing. I'll add you to the thumbnail because I
He's got a
change
nice
it up each
haircut.
time.
Glossy 3x5s preferred.
So, all right, Josh, the whole idea for this topic about how you got started at ham radio was yours. I let the new guys go first, but why don't you go ahead and take it?
Well, I'll take it after Sterling. Why don't we throw to him? Because I think he said he had
that's right.
short time.
I forgot about that. I'm sorry.
Got to get out for a dinner.
That's
dinner
cool.
reservation sooner or later. So
Go right ahead.
all right. So Sterling in Zero SSC. I've been on here before, so I'll spare the introduction. But I can go back to like age 5 when I was like, I got my first pair of like those toy walkie-talkies with like the button that pushes Morse code out. And it was just like a game with my dad of like, basically I would never talk to him unless it was on a walkie-talkie. And I would, stretch the limits of those walkie-talkies, both power and range and distance. And I figured out after breaking them that the antenna is a coil, and I stretched the coil out, and they're 49 megahertz. So a longer antenna meant better range. So we had a long street, and I would go out and walk, 500 feet, 600, 700 feet before it would, the range would die off, and I'd try to make it go longer. So I tried adding extra wire because why not? Because my dad gave me these little hints and tips. At some point, I found like my family stash. I think maybe around age 7 or something of FRS, like camp radios. Then that's like probably the first time I heard anybody else, like any other human except for me, my dad, and my local family, on a radio, and it kind of opened my mind up to like that's a thing. And I started like sitting on the roof of my parents' house and scanning through the channels and finding out if I could hear anybody and talking to people. I actually talked to somebody from Walmart because they used FRS radios, and they said, "Get off this channel." And I'm like, "What?" It was the most scary thing. Like, oh no, I committed a crime, but actually they probably were because they were using FRS for business.
They still do that, by the way.
Yeah.
They still do that. Yeah. They're like, you're not supposed to be on this channel. I'm like, you're using a public channel, dude. Yeah. Actually, I can.
Yeah. It was so fascinating. And they were like 2 miles away. So I was the thing on the radio said 36 miles, but I already knew by that was total BS. I was 13 when I got my first CB radio, and I learned about that whole thing, and the second I turned that on in the car after we were coming back from my grandparents in Kansas, it was some talk about a lot lizard and, this, that, and the other thing. And my dad just shut it off. And I asked, what's the lot lizard? It's like, don't ask that ever again. And if you go to Urban Dictionary, I'm sure they have the definition. And I found a few friends in high school who were into that like CB thing. A lot of people who drove trucks had dually antennas. So I'd be like, "Hey, is that a CB?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." And we'd talk about it. One of my friends, we were also into music. He was a bassist and I was a guitarist. We had like a little band. He was into CB radio, and his dad had like a ham radio license book that I borrowed. And from that point on, along with getting a scanner, my mom had a police scanner, and there was a button called ham. I clicked that, and the two kind of mixed. I found a repeater, and I started hearing people just talking about the sake of talking on a radio, and that just like, it blew my mind wide open. And so I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, I finished that book, and I got my tech license in 2007. KD0BZE was my call sign, and then I started doing YouTube. I upgraded to general, and I got my current call sign in 0SSC. And the YouTube channel was it was just the thing to do in 2009. I'll go to my analytics here to kind of like show it off. It really like blew up in 2012, but like in 2009, I just post random stuff like, here's a tour of my shack, here's me working CW, I got my first Morse code paddle, and so on and so forth. I made and then I got into college, and around 2012, I got my maximum viewership, which is like not that much compared to a lot of you guys. And then for a long time, after I graduated college until nowish, in modern day, about 2017, when I'm starting to figure out YouTube better, I barely did anything. So I did have a little bit of fun there. And if I have a New Year's resolution,
let's not do that.
it's to make this YouTube channel better. I have a lot of ideas, and I want to get in it more. Not to make money or anything, because you probably saw I made $719.96 in 10 years. So
I thought that was monthly. I was like, man, you're killing it.
Yeah, no, that was the entire lifetime of my whole account.
I looked at that and I was like, oh, lifetime. Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know. I thought they'd be cool to share, but yeah, that's In0SSC in a nutshell. And I won't even go into detail about how ham radio changed my life and it's my job now and all this sort of thing. We'll save that for another time for video.
Cool.
Because anyway, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah. You got to leave now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. Hey, thanks for joining us, Sterling.
Yep.
Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We missed you last time, so I'm glad you're able to make it this time.
Cool. Glad to be on. I'll see you next time, hopefully.
Okay. Have a good one.
See ya.
Nice to meet you, Sterling. Bye-bye now.
See you, Kyle.
Take care. 7-3.
All right. So, there we go. Now we got.
I just gotta say, Alan's here. Like a real dude.
Wow.
I was just thinking.
I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to bleep all you guys out because this is my channel that it's on, and I don't want my algorithm messed with because you guys have filthy mouths. So
I'm just trying to kill. I'm trying to kill your.
Yeah, I know what you're trying to do because I try to do the same thing to you, man. Bob and I are like this with subscribers. He's actually like here, and I'm here, and I'm like catching up to him because people are gonna figure out really soon that I'm young and he's not, and they're gonna start subscribing to me more. That's my theory, but it hadn't worked out yet.
Bring better looking women on.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a good point. So, all right, cool. No, that's all good. Josh.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, similar to Sterling, I had walkie-talkies as a kid, and, like little dorky headset that you'd put on and run around the neighborhood. And one day I heard an airplane kind of fly overhead, and I was like, "Oh, wow, okay, that was really cool experience." And then I'm a little bit different than a lot of you. I didn't have a CB growing up, or really anybody in my family ever had one, but we did have receivers, and so I was always kind of interested in DXing medium wave AM stations, stuff like that. Putting together longer wires, getting out the window, and getting trying to see how far I could receive and pick up interesting stations from around the world and all that good stuff. And that took me through most of the elementary, middle school time frame. And I joined Boy Scouts. I was in Cub Scouts, joined Boy Scouts. And on a summer trip, camp out or summer camp, there was a scoutmaster that had a Kenwood handheld, and he was trying to explain what a repeater was and what he was doing. But I don't know if it was just the way he was presenting the information, but I didn't really get it. And so I was like, okay, ham radio exists, but I didn't really remember much of it. And then very similar to Sterling, later, I'm working for an aerospace company. We're working on line of sight stuff. And one of basically my first Elmer comes and says, hey, you kind of have an interesting knack for some of this stuff. You should look into amateur radio. And so then that led me down the road of like, oh, okay, that's what this is. Technician, knock that out. We got licensed the same year, 2007. And then a couple of years later, I upgraded to general. Now, mind you, at the same time I'm making YouTube videos. I started my channel in 2006. So I've been on YouTube for a really long time. And after dabbling in all kinds of stuff, I kind of realized like the thing I'm doing the most and I have the most interest in is HF radio, making these long distance contacts, seeing how far I can receive and listen. And so I kind of just dove into that aspect of it. And that's kind of been my interest. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like SOTA so much, even though I can't get out and do it as much as I'd like with the family and whatnot, is you get yourself up in a spot that is just so clean from an RF standpoint. It's just so quiet. And that really is fun because you can really pull in a lot of stuff. Not just amateur radio, but just all kinds of different signals that are out there, which is really, really interesting. So I always say it's a great time to be alive in ham radio because there's just so much interesting things that you can be doing. And so, yeah, that's kind of my quick story on that.
Cool. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, sometimes I get comments on my videos how that's not ham radio. That's not this, that's not that. And I'm like, you know what? People have said that since the dawn of time. When AM first came out, they said that's not ham radio. When sideband first came out, they said that's not ham radio. When FM repeaters, that's not ham radio. When digital and all this kind of stuff. So I think ham radio is growth. I think it's adaptation to the new technologies and whatnot. So I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, I made that POXAG video about the pagers.
Yes.
And I got a ton of comments like, well, we just have cell phones. I'm like, you guys are literally the ones that are arguing why we should still use ham radio instead of cell phones.
Right,
Why can't we do both? There's a place for everything. And it's fun. It's fun to experiment and have fun with that kind of stuff. Even though you may not use it for the most amazing stuff, it's still cool.
Yeah, totally agree. Cool, man. Thanks. This is a good topic, Josh. So I'm glad you brought it up. So any other topics that you guys want to talk about in the future, if you think of something, shoot an email to the list. Okay, so on my screen right now, which should match with the recording that I'm doing, Rob is on the top left corner. So I'm going to let Rob go, and then Mike, and then Kyle, and then Bob. So Rob, it is yours to do.
Okay, so N1 NUG, name is Rob, and I'm the 741 channel. Basically, I got started in radio as far back as I can remember. When I grew up, it was just me and my dad. My mom had passed away, and my dad always had a shortwave radio on the kitchen table. And so as far as I can remember, I was always listening to ham radio because that's what he listened to. So as I got older, I kind of got interested in that. And when I was a teenager, my dad brought home a CB radio to fool around with. And I took it from him. He never even got a chance to take it out of the package. I took it up in my room. I hooked it up to an antenna and started fooling around with it. All my buddies got into it. And all through my teenage years, I was on the CB radio talking with my buddies. When I got into college, I went for electronics. My dad brought home the study kit for the ham radio test, partly because he wanted me to get it, but I think he wanted to get it too. But in those days, you needed Morse code, and neither one of us could figure it out. We had the tapes and everything, and we started doing the Morse code, but it was tough because I was going to school and whatnot. But But then they came out with the no-code tech license right in that time frame, the early 90s. So right after that came out, we talked about getting our licenses. But then when I was in college, I met my other Elmer, my dad being my first one. My other Elmer, W1UPH, who's now a Silent Key. He had gone back to school for some retraining, and he's the one that actually convinced me to go get my no-code license. So that's what I did back in 92. Got my license on my 19th birthday. It came in the mail. So that was kind of a cool thing. But then I never really did much with it. I got on the 2-meter repeaters a little bit. A couple of my buddies from the CB radio got their licenses around the same time too. But we all started getting busy with work and everything after that, and just didn't do a whole lot of transmitting. Did a lot of listening. And then about 10 years ago or so, I take that back. Around 2003, I got interested again for a little while. I was in between girlfriends, and I had some time. So I studied for the code and got the code and got my general in 2003. And then 10 years after that, started really getting into ham radio more. And that's when I upgraded to extra and really started to get more active on the air. Met some local rag true groups and talked with those guys, joined a club, and that kind of progressed from there. I'm still kind of a casual guy. I don't really do any contesting. I only dabble with the digital modes a little bit. Still do way more receiving than transmitting. But I always liked the hobby. I like collecting radios. I got a bunch here I don't ever use, but I also like tinkering with them. So I started my YouTube channel to kind of dovetail this together. I started my YouTube channel back around 2009. I started making repair videos to show my buddy Scott how I was fixing stuff. He and I like to fix things, small engines, cars, whatever, it doesn't matter. So it got to the point where our schedules were not aligned, and he wanted to know how I was fixing something. So I said, I'll just throw it up on YouTube. You can look there. And one thing led to another, and I think it was Callum kind of said people started watching the videos. You know, the algorithm shared them, whatever. People started watching, commenting. So I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. I'll keep making them. So I did, and I kept making the videos, and I started throwing ham radio in the mix with it because, you know, he and I both dabble with radios. So threw those in there. They haven't really been too big for me until the last year or so. I think there's just more interest in ham radio on YouTube because of all of you guys out there. So people have started watching my radio videos, and that's why I'm here, I guess, is because I've got some of that content that you guys all have too. And I guess that's pretty much my story in a nutshell.
Cool, man. Well, hey, sounds good. A lot of similar stuff to my story as well. And I'll go last. I was I named everybody else, so I didn't name myself, but I'll go last. It's people who watch my channel know my story already, but I'm going to say it anyway because I get new subscribers all the time. So, okay, so resetting here. We're going to go. We just heard from Rob about how he got started in ham radio. It looks like Kevin's going through warp speed right now, and
I love that you're wearing a Slayer shirt, Kevin. I hope you represent that in real metal fashion.
Oh,
real metal.
You got it.
Cool.
Like the thing that the kids are doing now is they're wearing metal shirts because they think it's cool and they don't actually.
Yeah.
I almost went to their last concert here in SoCal in LA, but I had to work. My cousin Justin got tickets, called me. I got screwed.
Don't they know that it's the farewell tour?
Yeah.
Wow.
Last one in LA.
No doubt.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Mike. The floor is yours. Tell us how you got started in ham radio, what you've learned along the way, or well, how you got started in ham radio, and include YouTube if you like.
Well, thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me. I got into ham radio. I got licensed about 3 years ago, I feel. I read a lot of news on my iPad in bed when I'm going to sleep. And I was reading some article. I have like a gun thing in one of the feeds that I follow. And one of the articles was on, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was like an Oregon standoff back in some time where some militia guys were trying to protect some land or something like that. So they mentioned that these guys were communicating with these little Bofang radios. And I had known about ham radio pretty much my whole life. My dad's a ham. I was kind of young when I still lived in Florida and didn't really, I mean, he didn't really, we were, you know, I was 8 when I moved to Michigan. So he didn't really show us what ham radio was, but there was always a tower in the yard. And I've always known what ham radio was, or that it existed, but I didn't really, I guess, know what it was. So they were talking about these Bofang radios and they're like $25. Well, I'm like, well, shoot, that's kind of interesting. Cause I, you know, it for just emergency comms, if, you know, the grid goes down or whatever, you got a way to talk, right? So I downloaded a book on my iPad. It was like the fast guide. It's not what this is, but it was like the fast guide to ham radio technician or something like that. It was a couple hundred pages, and I read it in like 5 hours one Saturday morning, and then downloaded an app on my iPhone and just took the practice test a million times and went online to find the nearest and the soonest test. And I went and got my technician. Didn't try for the general. I'm like, I'm good. This is the hardest test I've taken since high school. So, but I passed. And then the longest 2 weeks of my life was waiting for the FCC to give me my call sign, which was KE8EPF. That was my first call sign. And very soon after that, because that's like the worst call sign ever. Very soon after that, I got K8MRD as the vanity call, and spent a bit of time. I really listen a lot more on VHF, UHF. I'm not really much into that side of ham radio. But I initially started talking to a couple hams that were in my age, and we would sit here at my shack. I used to have that TYT 8900 right there, but it broke, so it's in the shop and it might get fixed. It might not. But as I was learning this, and like none of this was here, there was basically like the phonetic alphabet tacked to the wall here, and that was it. So we would sit there, we would sit in here in the shack, like me and 2 other guys, and just kind of learn about ham radio together. One guy was in it for basically forever. His name is Jason, W8ZZU. Hi, Jason. And another guy named Drew. And we would basically just sit here on the repeaters and like drink beer and just we'd get like hammered drunk, and we got to be imagining what the other guys are listening to. But we'd sit here for hours, but it was great. So like Jason was kind of my first Elmer, so to speak. He's actually in my first HF portable video, that guy. But just learning the phonetic alphabet and what all of these very basic ham terms mean. And I was just enamored by the hobby. So once I kind of started learning about HF and like, oh, everybody's like, oh, you got to get an HF. You got an HF. Totally, completely different aspect of the hobby. And that's really what reeled me in. So I got my general about a year after I got my tech. And, oh, by the way, watched every single one of yours, Jason, and yours, Josh's videos, like 800 million times, especially Josh's, because you have like 50 Bofang videos.
Yes.
But that's all I had, and I was like, this thing is awesome, man. And like, so like every time I get something new, I'll scour YouTube for it. And like waiting. So I got the UV5R first, and then I got the GT3TP. So I was like scouring YouTube for like in anticipation of getting the new radio, and like to kind of learn everything about it. So Eric Ham Radio Concepts had a video on that radio, and like basically I just started watching YouTube videos on everything, and kind of that's how I learned a bit more. But then I got my general, and once you get on the air and you make your first antenna, I made my first antenna, and that's really rewarding. I made a fan dipole for 40 and 20. And then I found Callum's channel, and he's doing all these antenna videos, and I'm like, I am an antenna geek. I love antennas. So the YouTube channel came along because of Tony K9ARV, who is N4ARV now. Just getting out in the field and playing radio. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then it's just, and I got my extra earlier this year, so. Thinking about getting a VE at some point. I'm sure I will at some point in my life. So yeah, that's think I've said enough.
Yeah, that's good. No, hey, you can do a VE now. I'm a VE, and I'm just a general. Now I can only test. I can only test technicians, obviously, but
Right.
Getting new people in the hobby is arguably
That's the goal. That's
right.
the goal, and I think
Totally.
it's great
That's it.
that
Yep.
so many of us are kind of. I say younger. I mean, I just turned 40, and I think most of us are kind of in the same age. But
yeah,
you know, and we've talked about this before. Having YouTube is kind of, I think, the newer generation's version of kind of getting into things. So
right.
That's kind of why I got. That's one of the main reasons I got into it, was just kind of to give back to the hobby and really just document. Like anytime I do a video, I'm learning something new for the first time, basically. So people can kind of follow along with what I do on the channel and like watch an idiot learn or fail or whatever. So, but I have fun doing it either way. So
totally. No, I've been telling my viewers lately that I'm like, I learn as much from you guys as you learn from me. Because I have people coming up to me at Hamfest saying, "Oh, I learned this and I learned this. Thanks for doing this video on this." And I'm like, dude, people that commenting on the video, they're like, "Oh, hey." And they're not really being, some people are rude, but most people are not rude about it. They're like, "Oh, hey, you misspoke here. This is actually this and this and this." I'm like, "Hey, cool. I learned something. That's cool."
Yep.
I really like that.
Yep.
So yeah, good deal. Thanks, Mike. Mike's been on every YouTubers Bunch video to date. So he's
I have
he's
nothing
really,
else to do.
I was going to say, you don't have a wife, so
Nope.
no wife,
My
no
cat
life.
was sitting earlier, but he left. So
Cool, man.
he didn't want anything to do with us.
All right, great. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go over here to Kyle, AA0Z.
Hello.
Who was also on the Mount Pacifico soda
Yeah.
expedition with us.
Yeah, had a
So,
great time. That's,
that was fun.
That's gonna be an every year thing, right, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, we may just go back. I like that a lot.
I need another background, so I'm ready.
Yeah, I thought that was great. That we may even drive up this time. More people will come out.
Well,
there you go.
You just schedule it for the same weekend, and everyone, you just pick a new mountain and just go.
Yeah, the camping on the mountains is the hard thing.
That's
the
true.
trick.
There was that guy that was doing VHF FM contacts on the mountain right next to that one we were on.
Yeah, but I don't know if you can camp out there. I don't know if they have
Oh.
campsites. See, we were on the summit with
Yes.
the campsite. That's
Yes.
rarer in California. That's not a common
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll talk about that. in the
Okay,
future.
we can
But
talk
yes,
about
we'll,
that. Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
make it a thing.
I can make sure to put that on my calendar if you do that a thing. So yeah, good deal. All right, Kyle, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, so Kyle, AA0Z, just like everyone else, I got started in the CB land in the late 80s. In high school, had CBs in the car. That's how we met up with everyone. We had different nicknames for different places to meet up and where we were going to party, what we were going to do that weekend. So I'm right in line with everyone on the CB craze. I never progressed into the ham radio world until I got into college, and I went to University of Missouri, and I was on the solar car team. And we needed a way to communicate from the chase car to the solar car and do telemetry back and forth. And one of the guys that was on I was on the solar array team. We put together the solar arrays. And he said, "Hey, why don't we, there's this thing called ham radio. Why don't we all get our license and we can communicate and we can use, higher power." And other universities like Cal Poly and Purdue and MIT, they were still trying to figure out FRS and using, getting out of range and being frustrated. So we got our ham radio license and, used that during the solar car race. And it was great. And then I stuck with it, kind of put it down during college, didn't do a lot. I was on the Mizzou ham radio club. We really didn't have a club shack. We just met and, talked on the repeater and did some minor operating. And then I got a job and put it down for a while. And about 10 or 12 years ago, got back into it. And started to contest, started to meet more people. I joined a club, which I think is a good thing as a young amateur to get it, get into a club, start to meet people, start to operate, start to, get on the bands. And then the natural progression for me, because I was younger, was to scour the internet and YouTube on finding information. And, YouTube was kind of my original mentor, where I would find stuff on YouTube, find people that were doing stuff, and be like, oh, that's cool. I'll go out and try it. I remember watching WG0AT. He was one of the first channels I subscribed to.
Oh, he's a cool guy, man.
And
if you ever met him in real life, he's an awesome dude.
Yeah, and I remember watching his soda videos and thinking, that is awesome. Hiking up this mountain, activating the mountain. So he inspired me to do more with ham radio and to make videos on YouTube. I like sharing information. I'm not one of these people who, if I learn something new, I'm not going to try and tell everyone about it. I like to share it. So YouTube was a natural fit to make YouTube videos and to have another outlet, So that's how I got started on YouTube. But then through my radio hobby progression, I joined a club and got more interested in the club. And before I knew it, I was sitting on the board, and here I am. I'm the president of the largest amateur radio club here in St. Louis. We have about 325 members. So we do quite a bit of stuff in the amateur radio community. We educate and pass about 40 to 50 new hams every year in the St. Louis area, and put on classes, put on mentoring classes. We have a ham fest that is the biggest in the Midwest other than Dayton. It brings about 1,500 people. It's called Winterfest. It's coming up in January. So between work and ham radio and being the president of the largest club, it keeps me pretty busy. I do a lot of operating. I like to contest. I love to contest. So I've got a remote station. I contest, but I don't do a lot of DXing, and I don't do a lot of casual operating. I'll turn on the radio and listen to some nets on 40 and 80 meters. But if there's no, I don't really have a reason to just get on and talk and make contacts. I like to contest, and so that's my MO on ham radio. But yeah, so it's kind of like the last 20 some odd years in a nutshell there.
Cool. Good. Well, yeah, that you and I traded some emails about that Midwest Division Convention, and hopefully, I'm tied up this year, but hopefully next year I can put that on my calendar. That'd be fun. It sounds like a good show.
Yeah. The only thing that I don't like about it is it's the same day as Winter Field Day, and I love Winter Field Day. So
yeah,
it's I don't get out. I'm going to do Winter Field Day, but I won't get out there probably till 9:00. And but it's a 24-hour contest. I'll get my fix in, and that'll be it.
Cool. All right. Thanks, man. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, so we're going to go over here to Bob. You were the last to join, dude. So you get to go. You're not last. I'm going to go last. So you're actually second to last. So you get to go before I do.
Awesome, dude. Let's see. How did I start? Okay. My journey was a little bit different. Early on, I had an uncle who was a ham, and he still is. And I kind of got enamored with it early on, 7, 8 years old, and then got away from it, forgot about it for years and years and years until I was drag racing professionally. And I needed to get a commercial license to run radios at racetracks between the car and crew and telemetry in the trailer. And I just on a whim at the same time, because I was already doing it, I went and took the technician's test. And there was also kind of a preparedness thing going on. So I did it that way, got my tech license, joined a club. Real soon after that, got upgraded to general, and then I got shamed into becoming an extra, because shortly after joining the club, my local ham club, I got volunteered to become president. So I actually was shamed into becoming an extra, and I did a lot of contesting. I got licensed in 2011. Got very heavily into it. I mean, just immersed myself in ham radio. In about 3-4 years ago, we kind of quit racing. We took a year off, and that turned into 3 or 4 years off now. And let's see, what else? How I got into YouTube. I got into YouTube because I wanted to learn filmmaking. And I figured, wow, what can I do to learn filmmaking and to make interesting videos? And I thought, if I can make ham radio videos that are interesting for non-hams to watch, I could do anything. So that was kind of my story in a nutshell. And lately, I mean, I have been growing so much in ham radio because of the videos. I'm doing so much learning. It's just insane. It's like a big circle that never ends, and I love it. And thanks for having me back.
Oh yeah. Hey man, we need some California perspective on this group that's a little bit more non-California perspective, and that's you, buddy. So I tell you, I was going through the other day, and I'm like,
insulted.
Josh, Bob, David, and Kevin are all in California, and I'm like,
we're not Californians.
Something
We're
wrong
very
with
different
that.
from California.
There's something wrong with
We're
that.
actually the real California.
Yeah,
there you go. That's what it is.
That's what it is. Yeah. So I'm like, wow, good. All right, cool, man. Hey, yeah, Bob, good to have you back. I know you missed last time, but I know you've been a big part of the group to date, and I hope you'll continue to join us. And it's always good to have a different perspective from everybody that's on the channel. So I'll go ahead and say my piece real quick. I got into ham radio through CB. I wanted a cell phone when I was in high school, so I went out and got a cell phone, and one of my friends said, "Hey, you don't need a cell phone, you need to get a CB because it's cheaper to talk from car to car when you're driving down the road on a CB than it is a cell phone." And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So we got into CBs, and several of us driving around town getting into CBs, and we met a bunch of people on the CB, and we all hung out. There was a Carrollton CB club, which is Carrollton's just a town, a couple towns over from where I live now. And one of those guys in that club was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of ham?" This is like 2 years into it. "Hey, have you ever heard of ham radio?" I'm like, "No, never heard of that." So he explained what it was, and I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "I'm going to go take my test and study and take my test. I want you to go with me." I'm like, "Okay." So we did that together, and then we got into ham radio, and that was it. And I talked on 2-meter repeaters for 3, 4, 5 years, and that was all I did. I had the Radio Shack HTX 212, 45-watt, 2-meter monoband mobile radio in my truck with the Hustler HQ 144, I think it was. It's like a 5.5-foot tall 2-meter monoband antenna. I've still got it. It's in my garage somewhere. So it's a great antenna for 2 meters if you never want to talk on anything else. But and I got into that, and then I was kind of like I got my first ticket in 1994. So I was in college when I got my first ham radio license, and I was from 1994 until 2004, basically. I was on heavy into it for 2 or 3 years, and I'd take 2 or 3 years off. Then I'd go back for 2 or 3 years. It was kind of like that for a while. And I think YouTube is kind of what got me back into it the last time, and I've been into it ever since, because I started actually selling radios on a website called grapevineamateurradio.com, and I started selling the TYT TH9800, which is a good radio. It's not a great radio, but it's good. It works well for what it is. And I kept getting the same questions over and over and over again. How do you do this? How do you do this? Where's the menu for this? So I made a YouTube video. My very first YouTube video was how to program from the front panel the TYT TH9800. And I wrote out cue cards on a piece of paper with a magic marker, and I held them in front of the camera, which I recorded from my phone. It was very, very low budget. And I put that video up, and I didn't look at it for like 4 or 5 months. But people would email me and ask me questions and say, here's a video that shows you how to do that. Go look at this. And like 4 or 5 months, that was in August of 2014. And in January or February of 2015, I was like, and I just was poking around. I looked out at YouTube, and that video had like 10,000 views. And I'm like, maybe there's something to this YouTube thing. I don't know. So I started formulating a plan. I put up my first Ham Radio 2.0 video in May of 2015. And then from there on, it's been both an uphill and a downhill battle, an uphill battle and a downhill snowball, both. And I've met some really great people through YouTube about ham radio, which includes all the guys on this channel, all the guys on the YouTubers bunch here, plus the guys who didn't join us tonight, like David from Ham Radio Now and Gary from Ham Radio Now and Jerry, KG6 HQD. There you go. And all the guys on this, all the guys who have joined us on YouTube and commented on YouTube and shared the YouTube videos and come up to me at Ham Fests and said, hey, I watched your video. You really helped me get this radio programmed or figure out this problem or get my license or get my upgrade. Because I recorded videos from a local club here in Hurst, Texas, about they give a technician and a general upgrade class twice a year, every year. They're working on an extra. I get asked that question all the time. What about an extra? They're working on that.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
People ask that all the time.
Twice as many questions in the extra pool as there is in the other two.
Yeah.
So, but I get a lot of comments about, oh, hey, you helped me get my first technician license because of this class you put up. You helped me get my upgrade to general because of this class you put up, which is not me. I'm not giving the class. I'm just recording the class and putting it up on my channel. So I have very much enjoyed getting to know so many different people in ham radio through YouTube and making a lot of friends and making connections that I will hopefully have for years to come. So that is my story behind YouTube, because ham radio got me into YouTube, but YouTube has very much enhanced my ham radio lifetime and career. And I'm very grateful to everybody who has watched my channel, participated in my channel, commented on my videos, and all of the guys who have participated in this YouTubers bunch, because I'm telling you, and I told you guys this before I clicked record on the camera tonight, every time we put up one of these videos with all of us on it, I get nothing but positive comments. Some people don't agree with what we're saying, especially ARRL stuff, but even those people are like, hey, you guys did a very good thing by talking about this. I don't agree with 1, 2, 3, but the fact that you guys got together and talked about it and gave all your opinions, I love that. And I've got nothing but positive comments on everything with the YouTubers group that we've done. And I want to keep going with it, because it was my idea to start it the first time. And I thought, oh, we'll do this one time. But like I've said before, when I came on there and all 5 or 6 or 7 of us, whoever it was on the first video, got together, everyone besides me was like, this is a great idea. Let's keep going with it. I'm like, okay, good. I'm not the only one. I don't feel like odd man out anymore. So, so I've very much enjoyed it, just growing through YouTube that way. So that's where I'm at with that. So, and that's a Brady's Bunch scene on the channel right now with 3x3. So